That's a bit of a weird one. I don't quite know whether that's worked or not. Can you hear me? Hello, everyone. I'm here. Hello. Let's see if Big Face works. Hello, everyone. Hello. Oh, that's a bit bleachy. Hello. How you all doing? Can you hear me? Good. We're in. Oh, sorry about that slight delay. I don't know why YouTube has been very slow, but there's enough going on in the world that I'm not going to question it too much. Oh, so let's crack on, shall we? We are tonight talking about, well, for a variety of reasons that have been in the news, we're talking about Network Rail's Climate Adaptation Report, the update to it. The last one, I think, was issued back in, was it 2015 or possibly 2018? There have been two previous adaptation reports. We're going to be looking at the third one, which was released a couple of weeks ago. So that's the plan for tonight. You can see me, you can hear me. Excellent. Let's crack. Let's not do my usual waffling nonsense. Let us crack on. So, all I have is James Acaster. Yes, I just have James Acaster's voice in my head saying "Let's crack on" whenever I now say that, and I find myself saying it awfully frequently. So, let's first of all start by looking at the transport statistics, the COVID transport statistics. Let's see. So we have got. Let's get my Wacom out. Mainly a bit of a dent, but that's because of the storm. So there's been a bit of a drop. You can see kind of at the end here. There's been a bit of a drop again in particularly rail ridership and also in cycling as well. You can see the cycling's taken a drop, and then actually bus and road, private road usage has shot upwards. I think that's because of the storms. So if we jump and zoom in a bit, you can see I've added the 24th of February. I've added a yellow thing because on the 24th of Feb was when all of the measures were removed, wasn't it? So that was the end of the measures. So we get to have a look and see what difference that's made in terms of the usage of public transport. Everything has shot up since then. Actually, there has been a general shooting up provisionally. You can see if you zoom in here. You can see there's been the rise that generally undercounts. The key point to make is that rail pre-storms, rail had reached about 75 to 80% of pre-COVID ridership. So we're looking to see that shoot up pretty rapidly now. There should be nothing now between here and summer blocking that, other than the fact that lots of services, the various train operators are still running between 60 and 80% of the pre-COVID timetable, which is rubbish, absolutely rubbish. Why is that still the case? But it is. So the sooner that LNER or not, they've been running a full service since I think the start of February, in fact, or certainly early in February. But TransPennine are running a 60% timetable, so not good enough. Good, yes, right. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that? No, not much. Not much else to say really about the COVID stats. We shall watch them with interest as we progress, as the year progresses. But I expect this to become less interesting as fairly soon, because I think we'll be reaching. I hope they keep publishing it for quite a while. It'd be quite nice if they just published it. They just published this. It's a good data set. What would be nice is if they split it by train operating company, because it would give us a better idea geographically of where is, what the split is and which train operators are in better nick. Robin Weston is saying the timetable is absolutely rubbish. Yeah, the timetable is dreadful. It's particularly up this end of the country. It's just a real mess. Yes. Oh, that's a very good point, actually. I haven't got to put a news item in that, but absolutely. Solidarity. I mean, firstly, solidarity to UCU strikers, everyone, academic strikers across the country, but also solidarity to all of those those in the RMT striking for London Underground. They're having their pensions squeezed as a result. It's not anything to do with Sadiq Khan. All the spin trying to make it as if it's Sadiq Khan's fault. But no, it's DFT. It's Shaps. They're absolutely pointlessly squeezing TfL's finances for no reason other than just because they can. That's the only reason they're doing it. So yes. Vivek Vile is pointing out that it's a little bit that splitting by train operating companies is a bit fudgy with the timetabling predictions. Yeah, yes, But it would be nice if by splitting it, attempt to split it, because it would be very helpful to get, if they probably continue to publish this data set, so exactly as it is now, but also a provisional one with a provisional split, of pre-COVID levels for each of the different train operating companies. They could caveat out saying this isn't perfectly accurate, but it'd be very interesting to see even a broad sweep of what that looks like. The Transport for Wales, Gareth Williams is saying that the Transport for Wales timetable seems just way out. Yeah, a lot of people saying that the timetables are just look a real mess compared to what they used to be. I hope that there are plans for that to return to normal within the month. Yeah, there's no reason for it not to be, frankly, none at all. Right, the news. Yeah, the news. Yes. Ukrainian railways. This felt like a lens through which to look at the obvious and main news of the moment, which is that Putin has invaded Ukraine and is currently bombing it to bombing Kharkiv and Kiev to high hell, as well as some of the other cities. What is there that we can say about this? Absolutely nothing. There's nothing we can discuss that's useful here, other than there are some seriously stupid takes out there from all sides of the political spectrum. But given that we have to judge our own, there are some incredibly stupid leftist takes out there about the idea that NATO has anything to do with it. Okay, long term, if you look back at the political failings, not just about NATO, but actually just the general political failings, our failure to integrate Russia into the wider world kind of sphere in the 90s was an error. That was a fundamental error that has laid some of the groundwork for what's happening now. Our disinterest, or rather kind of our almost waving on of Russia to become a kind of a mob state with Putin's sort of cronies making huge amounts of money out of Russia's natural resources. Yeah. But the idea that NATO is directly responsible for Russia, and should I say specifically Putin and the Kremlin invading Ukraine, is a really stupid take. I'm sorry. It's just a really stupid take. And it's like a strange circular loop of like trying to find a way to be anti-Western imperialism whilst just ignoring geopolitics. Don't do that, folks. Like, there can be multiple bad things. There can absolutely be multiple bad things. If you see that take, call it out, because it's stupid. Loads of bad takes. Lots of, be very careful about, and we're all guilty of it. Like, I've been trying not to retweet loads and loads of things, because there's plenty of, we can all see that. But when I spot something that I think is worthy and interesting and that made me think, I'll retweet it or I'll share it. The key thing to discuss is the fact that Putin's lost this war. That doesn't mean that he's not going to continue to inflict huge amounts of untold misery on the Ukrainian people, and indeed, causing a huge amount of harm to a lot of Russian boys and men. There's a huge amount of misery on that front as well. But let's face it, they are the aggressor, so we have to sort of look and focus our attention on the plight of the Ukrainian people. And people who are living in Ukraine, not just Ukrainians, but all the students, all the kind of the international kind of visitors and people living there who've also been displaced. I'm glad to see actually that the Ukrainian government has just put out a hotline for people to contact for African and Asian people to kind of or kind of actually basically for people of color, actually, because there have been problems at the border for people of color getting across the border. But basically everyone who's suffering as a result of Putin's aggression. We have to look at the misery. So that's going to continue. But Putin lost this war within a couple of days, because he just his logistics were hopeless. He was hoping that a 2-day sprint and he'd be on top of it, and he hasn't been. But he has lost. He has absolutely lost. That doesn't mean that the suffering is not going to continue for weeks or months or longer. Why do I say he's lost? Because he failed to because rather than going in without causing much damage and swapping the government and being able to start his project, he has created either heroes or martyrs of the current Ukrainian government. He has embedded a deep hatred of Russia in a way that never really existed before between Ukrainians and Russians, which will be impossible for him to get rid of. And it's quite clear that his armed forces are just hopelessly outclassed they're just hopeless. His armed forces have been absolutely shambolic. Not just the logistics, but the morale on the ground, their ability to direct force other than just damaging aerial bombardments, which, to be honest, aren't achieving much other than just human suffering and misery. So yeah, there is absolutely zero chance that he can successfully hold Ukraine. And to be honest, the likelihood of him managing to get across the whole country and take it over are pretty slim. So he has absolutely lost this war. He might win a few battles, but he has lost this war, which shouldn't bring us much comfort because, as we say, there's a lot of misery for the Ukrainian people. But this map is a map of the Ukrainian railways showing that they put out today, even showing where their system is still working for people to evacuate out of the country if they need to be, or to move from one city to another. A lot of people moving towards Lviv. Lviv over, if I know my Cyrillic, Lviv is over here. This is Lviv here. There's Lviv there. Yes, so then you can see, and in a way, this is a lens for which we can see where the Russian attacks are having an impact. And it's very much in this surge here, which is near Kharkiv. This is this side, and then kind of on this side of the country as well, and then obviously kind of coming up from Crimea as well. So you can see where the impact is being had, but actually not so. They're not penetrating. This is the key thing, that the Russian forces are not penetrating particularly well. Anyway. Lots of people who actually know lots more about logistics and military things can talk about that. But anyway, there are quite a few good sources out there to keep on top of the situation. It's worth noting that the Russian military is losing decile percentages of its mechanized and armored forces in already, which is not bode well. They can't build that. That's decades of armament that they're just losing in a few days. It's pretty horrifying. Anyway, so solidarity really to the Ukrainian railways. The Cyrillic is I can't pronounce Ukrainian so well. If it was slightly further South Slavic, I'd be better at pronouncing it. But Ukrainian's slightly more Northern Slavic and Eastern Slavic, and actually it's very much Eastern Slavic. And my pronunciation is not so good, so I'm not going to attempt it. There's some nice zhs and y's in there that I'm not going to, actually some ny's I think in there, but yeah, I'm not going to attempt it. But absolutely, Putin is taking on, amongst other things, taking on the Ukrainian railways, and the Ukrainian railways are winning. Oh, it's just miserable all round. So let's park that. It'd be It would have been obscene for me to have ignored that situation. But let's have a look at the next news thing. The rest of the news. Jumping quite dramatically to something entirely different. Quite an interesting little piece that I was pleased to see Network Rail publishing, which is that there's a logging, some logging. The logging industry in and around Abergavenny have been moving logs by rail again for the first time since, 2006 or 2004, quite a long time, nearly 20 years. But just pointing out that carrying logs any distance on lorries is bonkers. Put it on a train, folks. The railways are perfect for this sort of mass, kind of bulk haulage. Railways are what you should be using. So it's quite good to see that happening. That's in Abergavenny. Lovely. Yes, it is in Wales. What else? The Northern Agenda. Rob Parsons. Hello, Rob. Shout out to Rob. Has published, actually, Rob and Jen as well. Jen is the work kind of supports, well, both Rob and Jen published the Northern Agenda. So the Northern Agenda, they have looked at, they've kind of done a bit of polling looking at buses across the North. And the general theme is give the North back its buses. And it's interesting. It's always interesting to look at these. Just like it's interesting to look at the National Passenger Survey in relation to rail, it's interesting to look at these results in relation to buses. So would it improve? This is just a perception. So there's a lot of people saying, would it improve services if buses were under public control as they are in London? And 50% of people are like, yes, it would improve it a lot. And then another 17% are yes, it would improve. So that's like 70% of people. This lot. Up, and up. This much. That's a weird mushroom shape there. That's 70% of people. 70% of people who think who perceive, frankly, rightly so, that bus services would improve if they were under public control as they are in London. So it's quite clear that there is a strong feeling about this in the North. So these sorts of open questions are also very useful. So these ones here, if you choose not to use the bus, what is putting you off? Let's look at the top 3 things. Okay, there's lots of other entries that obviously fill, so we'll ignore those. But the top 3 things are firstly about frequency. Actually, really, these are 2 of the same. Really, so these are 2 responses. One is buses not regular enough. 2 is buses don't come at right times. That's just about frequency. So that's very much like a frequency. Frequency is freedom. There we are. The reason I hesitated because I was wondering whether my face was underneath it. Frequency is freedom. So that whole section there. What is that? That's 40% of people are like there aren't enough buses. And then the remaining section is talking about expense, about the fact that buses are too expensive, which is absolutely true. Actually, I've got top chat, not live chat. Sorry, everyone. I'll flip this over to live chat so I can see what you're saying. Hello, everyone. Do say hello in the chat to make sure I know it's still working. And then the other thing is about not convenient. That's probably about frequency again, actually. So it's almost 50%. Let's call it 50%. Almost, who are like not frequent enough, and then speed actually is another feature. People talk about speed. The buses are too slow, and that is related to traffic. By and large, that's a traffic thing. So if you've got lots of traffic, so what are the ways we can improve bus services? Well, I'd say bus lanes. And general kind of getting rid of car. Actually, let's go big face. So we've got what are the things there? We've got frequency and cost and speed. Frequency, cost, speed are the 3 things that are annoying people. Frequency and frequency and speed are a mixture of just run more buses, but also get rid of cars, so you've got more space to run buses, so more bus lanes, more bus-only roads, more modal filters, and then so that covers speed and convenience and not enough buses. And then in terms of expense, well, partly you can bring fares down if you've got more people travelling, if you've made it more convenient, because that's helpful, but also generally franchising of buses at minimum, ideally bringing them in-house to be entirely kind of council run, allows you to have a fare card system, like a bit like Oyster Card or contactless, kind of just a single tap system, which if not literally brings prices down, certainly improves people's perception of convenience and ease of use. So yeah, big time. Those are the ways to fix that problem. It's not rocket science. Yeah, it's good to see that. And then people talking about how often they use the bus. It's interesting, isn't it? You've got a mixture of people who like occasionally use the bus. So I'd fit into this camp here. I don't use the bus that often, actually. Use it every now and then, but not frequently. And then you've got other people who use it loads and rely on it loads, and that's pretty much the split. You've got. I'd say almost you could sort of, and you've actually once or twice a week is you can see that buses are actually a really important part of people's lives. You know, you've got occasionally occupies a large space. You've got people who clearly like this bit I'm shading. 1 in 4 people rely on the bus as a matter of that's how I travel around. That's a size. 1 in 4 people relying on the bus is a sizable chunk of people, and then for 3 out of 4 people to make use of the bus, and then 70% 3 or 4 days a week. That's a lot of people who are using the bus pretty regularly. You know, that's what is that? 25, 22. That's let me do my maths. 22, 30. That's the 40%. 40 plus. That's like 65% of people. Like the best part of 65% of people, 64% of people who are using the bus regularly and frequently. That's a lot of that's basic. That's the best part of kind of 1 in what is that? 1 in. It's not. It's like 3 out of 5. 3 in 5 people are relying on the bus. Buses are so important, so make them better. There we go. Buses. Integrated ticketing, absolutely, Gareth Williams, yeah, for sure. David Shepherd, how much faster do things get if buses get upgraded to trams? A bit, but I think, to be honest, a lot of the case, if you reduce traffic, if you get rid of, you just block cars, you make it horrible to drive, you get rid of public parking, these things all help buses. So they're fairly easy things to, yeah, they're fairly easy things to activate, and you do that by congestion charging. You do it by congestion charging made a huge difference to the average speed of buses and therefore ridership in London when it was introduced. So that's a big win. Anyway, lots of scribbling. Oh, now this is the kind of the most relevant news and why this episode feels like a good one to have done this week. We are still almost doomed. The IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, published its 6th assessment report of the state of play of climate change, and this one is specifically looking at the impacts, and adaptation and vulnerability. So it's not looking at ways we can tackle climate change. It's specifically looking at how we respond to it. So it's you know, and there are some uncomfortable realities coming out of the some uncomfortable realities in this report that are worth picking up on, which is what we're going to do this episode. And given that it's 1921, I think it's time we cracked on. Let's get started with tonight's episode, shall we? Welcome to tonight's Rail Natter. City 225 fades away. Dave is pointing out that Boris Johnson was slating low emission zones at Prime Minister's Questions today. He wants to remove them, specifically in Manchester. This is just him being absolutely partisan and tackling Burnham. It's a Burnham attack line, and frankly, you can go to hell. I'm maybe not Burnham's biggest fan, but the low emission zones are just an absolutely, and it's also a Cannes thing. They are an absolute no-brainer. Barry Jones points out when congestion. Let's get my big old mug back. Barry Jones is pointing out humorously that when congestion charging started in London, on one trip I overshot my destination by 3 stops because I hadn't realised how fast we were moving. Yeah, quite. Yes, and Simon, I agree. We do need a clean air zone standard. They are all different, and it's a little confusing. I think we should be striving for kind of a standard across all cities, and frankly, all cities of 100,000 people or more should have clean air zones in their centres, and ideally growing out and out, but certainly starting within the centre of the city, depending on what shape it is. Let's get my miniaturised face up in the top corner and jump back to 1938. Why, you might ask? Why? Well, because we need to briefly talk about Guy Stewart Callender. Back in 1938, Guy Stewart Callender was the first person to basically put 2 and 2 together and point out that, weirdly, he did it in a way that he said was positive and favourable, and it would stave off future ice ages. But he said that thanks to increasing CO2 levels in the atmosphere, we were going to see an increase in average temperatures across the planet. So it's quite interesting. He was a steam engineer, and he did, interestingly, he also got involved in looking at batteries and fuel cells, which is kind of relevant. He started out working on turbines and bits and pieces, but he was sort of an amateur in climatology, and but he was the first person to demonstrate that land temperature had increased since for the preceding 50 years. He was looking at data, and it was a theory that had earlier been proposed by someone else. But it ended up getting called the Callender effect because he was kind of the first to kind of demonstrate this fact. He hadn't proposed it, but he did demonstrate it. And it is like his main contribution was very much like, more CO2 concentration means increase in global temperatures. And you might think, oh, well, that's all fine and good. But, that was 1938. Jump forward to 2022, and I'm afraid to say that, quite. I'm afraid to... you know what I need to do? Wait a minute, watch this. I'm going to go in here, and let's just drag this. There we are. That's just... You'll see what I'm doing. There, and then I'm going to do the same here just to make sure that my face doesn't get in the way of the slides. There we go. Oh, there, good, that's better. Yes. So these are the extracts from the IPCC. So this is the report. This is the report they published. Climate change, a threat to human well-being and health of the planet. Taking action now can secure our future. This is the kind of the key takeaway headline that they're saying. But there is a quote that I'm going to find. I'm going to go into my tweet bookmarks, because there's the final. So we'll quote this in a second. But so these are kind of, and there are 2 headline outcomes of this report, the climate report. That we're not going to dwell on this report right now. We're looking just at the Network Rail report. But I thought it's worth pulling out these 2 kind of themes. Human-induced climate change is causing dangerous and widespread disruption in nature and affecting the lives of billions of people around the world. Temporarily exceeding global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius will result in severe impacts for nature, some of which will be irreversible. These are locked in. And actually, as Leo Hickman pointed out earlier today, not earlier today, actually, back in February the 28th, this is the final sentence of the IPCC report. The final sentence says, the scientific evidence is unequivocal. Climate change is a threat to human well-being and the health of the planet, and any further delay in concerted global action will miss a brief and rapidly closing window to secure a livable future. That's an excruciatingly doomy future outlook. And just to point out, there is every sort of statement like that has like a probability next to it, and this is like statistically like it's the little square brackets after this is very likely high consensus on this. So yeah, bad things are going to be happening, and we need to be. And we talked about the onion of doom last week, didn't we? The onion of doom is quite explicit. We need to be doing the stuff now, not in 2049. But right now, as quickly as possible. That's the key thing. Anyway, so everyone is here. If I shaved my beard off, I could portray that guy, literally Guy Callender, in a documentary. Thank you very much, David Shepherd. Very, very good. Right. Oh, so this is relevant to us. And again, I'm sorry Rail Natter so often comes down to just England, Scotland, and Wales looking through the Network Rail lens, but it's better that I speak about what I know and what I'm familiar with, and then people who know better can transfer. I try to do international stuff to contextualize this, but actually it's better that I talk within the realm that I know, and then people from other places, or if you've got, it's relevant, it's certainly applicable to other dominions, nations, countries, territories, authorities. But I'll stick with what I know, which is why I do so much Network Rail stuff, because I know Network Rail, I know the infrastructure, I know the way that things work. So that's why I look at Network Rail. And indeed, back in 2015, Network Rail published its Climate Change Adaptation Report. I think possibly the first or the second one, I can't remember, but I quote this one quite a bit when I'm doing lecturing. But they have released a new one. So that's the 2015 one. And in 2021, in December 21, actually, but they published it more recently than that, for some reason, I can't quite remember why, their third, or maybe the press release was more recently, but anyway, December 2021 is the date for their third adaptation report. And that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to look at that right now, in fact. So let's do precisely that. Let us bring the report up. It's a classic page turn, folks. You know what I need to do, though? I need to get my mouse up so that you can see my mouse. There it is. My mouse is here. You can see it, everyone. Everyone see the mouse? Lovely. Put NIR data in railway data sets. Well, yes, that would be nice. It'd be nice. Yeah, well, this is why I'm always explicit. I try to always remember to be, Richard Smith, very good point. I always try to be explicit about that I'm doing GB. So the big blobby island and not Northern Ireland. I'm not doing UK, I'm doing GB because Network Rail is just GB, it's not Northern Ireland. So I try to always be explicit. I try to always remember to say GB when I mean GB and UK when I mean UK. So let's do it. Let's have a look. I think this thing's 115 pages long, but we're going to kind of whiz through. We're not going to dwell on there's plenty of stuff that we can probably whiz through fairly rapidly. So people are saying how much of this report would have been gutted by Treasury. Well, let's see, shall we? So I've not picked through this in any detail yet. So let's see. But for the most part, it's talking about there will be things that Treasury will limit in terms of the maintenance budgets. But for the most part, this is kind of smaller fry stuff and procedural stuff. So yeah, I mean, Treasury could spend an extra 3 or 4 billion a year to allow Network Rail to get on top of its renewal cycle, so that it was not always fighting a losing battle. Because very much Network Rail is always fighting a losing battle. It's got, as I say in my lectures, it's got this triple whammy of the climate's getting worse. We're seeing more extreme events. Infrastructure is aging more quickly than we can get on top of renewals, and we want to be carrying more trains. So it's the triple whammy of three things all battling that are making it harder and harder to keep on top of ensuring our infrastructure is safe, resilient, and reliable. So, right, let's have a look at the report. Let's do it. So, there's the contents. There's some stuff about blah blah blah. So there's it's broken into nine sections. We've got an introduction, adaptation reporting power, climate governance at Network Rail, strategies and plans, Our approach to assessing climate change risk, interdependencies, which is an ominous and interesting looking page, just a couple of pages of that. Our climate change risks, adaptation actions and progress. That'll be like measuring. A lot of that might be kind of looking at specifically looking at how the metrics to actually measure progress and success. Conclusions, and then some appendices at the end. So let's see. So 110 pages or more, 112 pages of content. Let's see what we get through and what we can skip through. Here's Andrew Haynes looking quite cheerful. Fellow Andrew. That's fine. Doesn't matter. And to be honest, skip the executive summary. We don't need to worry about that. Let's see. Well, actually, we can look at the headlines. So they're saying adverse and extreme weather is accelerating deterioration of our assets. Yep, I just said that. Network Rail and the adaptation reporting power. So this is talking about the legal framework within which Network Rail have to report this stuff so the electricity companies have to do the same thing. Actually, certainly National Grid does. Oof. I'm going to drink some water from a bottle I bought in Munich airport, which is a dreadful airport, by the way. Oh, well, that's the water's not from a week ago, by the way. Anyway, lots of people saying all right, crikey, yeah. Dave's pointing out that the Heart of Wales line literally washed away in places recently. Yep. Matt Reed is saying, if money was no object, how would you solve those three problems? Oh, that's a whole episode in and of itself, Matt. And Gareth Williams is saying to Simon, actually, and to me, once went to a talk by Arthur Scargill, who seriously believed that we needed to move back to coal power generation and also steam trains. Oh, don't. Tosh, what's his last name? Tosh, is he Aslef? Was saying much the same thing, just absolute nonsense about coal and about the fact we need to get back to our coal day. There are some particular characters within the union movement, and frankly, they're a diminishing bunch, who are just who are absolutely crackers and think we need to go back to that time, and frankly, they're best ejected from the just best ignored, politely ignored. Give them a gift voucher and tell them to bugger off. Anyway, what else have we got? Actions speak louder than words. Well, yeah, you've said that, but this is a report, so fine. Strategies and programs, risk management, action plans, standards, guides. Okay, so it's just kind of outlining what's happening. Research and analysis, collaboration, engagement, all very nice, lovely stuff. Some cross references to. So right, the ARP is. It's worth just saying what the ARP is. The ARP is the adaptation reporting power, and the third report. So this is ARP3 is what this report is describing. Maybe we'll explain that a little bit more later. But that's part of that sort of statement is part of the requirements of the Climate Change Act 2008. So that's kind of related to the legal instrument that empowers various government bodies, government adjacent bodies, to have to do this stuff, to show that they are. Not only minimising the impacts as best they can, but also preparing for the future effects of climate change. So, lovely, and this is the cross-reference to sort of talk about it. So, here we are, shiny big buttons. I look forward to the moment that Network Rail changes everything to RA2. But anyway, introduction. So, we know this stuff. We know who Network Rail is. They operate some stuff, 20,000 miles of track, 30,000 bridges, blah, 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 loads of stuff. So this is their strategic priorities: safety, service delivery, efficiency, sustainable growth, customers and communities, people. Fine, yep, lovely. Region and route functions. So the region supports one or more routes, plans and responds to what passengers want and need from the railway. The routes deliver local operations, maintenance and renewals, and are responsible for day-to-day delivery of train performance. So here are you can see the regions are the coloured. So there's this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 regions. There are 5 regions, and then each of those there are 15 routes. So you've got Scotland is just one thing. Wales, I mean, it's worth pointing out that as I've said before about what structure the railway should have, I don't agree with this structure for Network Rail. I think that Network Rail should be structured around the subnational transport bodies. But anyway, kind of by the by, but people broadly should be familiar with these. They follow they essentially follow I mean, there's no logic to it. It's as ridiculous as all of the other. Who was it? John Stone or John Elledge? No, it was Steve, actually. It was Steve. It was Respros on Twitter. Pointed out how stupid all of the unitary authorities and various boundary authorities, constituencies, so on, are in the UK. It's just nonsense. And these boundaries are no different because they're based on the rail network of old. Anyway, yeah. So there you go. That's the structure of it. And so here we go. So this is good stuff. So this is the sort of thing that I quote in my lectures about sustainability, which is the challenges. How does the weather affect our railway? And this kind of explains that weather is an impact of climate is the average of all weather over 30 years. like by its definition, that's what it is. And weather is the way that climate manifests itself day to day. So there's lots of different things here that have been listed off. Effects from weather events. So things like adhesion, line contamination lead to traction loss. So that's like windiness can lead to like leaf fall that exceeds the amount that the railhead treatment train can go around and clear. Ice accumulation from cold, flooding, obviously, fog, which is not great for obscuring signals. Heat resulting to things like track buckle, rail buckles, OLE problems, overheated electrics, lightning strikes. I know the text is a little bit small on this. Hopefully it's not too much of an issue. Let's see. People are talking about NR Sands, and there's some typeface chat in the chat. That's fine, good. Lightning strikes, snow, subsidence, landslips, etc., and wind. These are some of the impacts. And so these are kind of all the standard things. We've talked about quite a few of these in episodes of Rail Natter, actually, haven't we? So we've covered some of this stuff. It's talking about delay, how many delay events occurred since the sort of numbers have been started. So 322,000 events that have caused delays as a result of weather events. So this is looking at weather-related Schedule 4 cancellations. It's 200 million, which actually is not that much. I'd expect it to be more, but still, 200 million quid's a lot of money, relatively speaking, from a maintenance budget perspective. That is quite a lot of money. So it's saying it should be noted that not all incidents are correctly attributed to weather, and these figures are likely to be conservative, with the actual cost being much higher. They're pointing out that actually the impacts are probably a lot worse than is considered. And here's a nice picture of some straight railway. That's quite nice, isn't it? I like that. I wonder where it is. Far north? Looks a bit like the Far North Line, couldn't it be? Yeah, it's nice. I like that. Anyway, lovely. So, what else have we got here? Right. So these figures show the cumulative costs for each of the impact categories across the whole network for GB. It can be nationally. It can be seen that the two biggest challenges to our service come from wind and flooding incidents. So there we are. So this is going to have a better breakdown looking at costs. Significant impacts associated with adhesion and snow, each costing more than 100 million over the same period. So here we go. So the Schedule 8 costs per weather category. 2006, 2021 for all of GB here. So wind is the most. It's over. So these numbers are larger than the previous numbers, but I presume that the impact categories is a more accurate assessment, because these numbers are obviously larger than the Schedule 4. These are Schedule 8 rather than Schedule 4. Okay, that's not entirely clear. But anyway, basically, Schedule 4 is long-term planned, so I don't. Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry, I've been misreading. So. 26 million delay minutes over 1 billion of Schedule 8. So that's emergency. That's last minute stuff. Schedule 8 is kind of last minute. Over 1 billion. So that's the figure. That makes more sense. So that's 1 billion plus another 200 million. There we go. That's me just not reading properly. People might have been pointed out. Yeah, there we go. So that's fine. Will's pointing out Schedule 4 is timetable rather than operational. Yeah, so that's where you've impacted on the timetable, and it's kind of essentially pre-planned. Like it's kind of known about before time. So anyway, so here are the Schedule 8 payments. This is of that 1 billion. So between 250 and 300 million pounds. So there's a major part of it's for wind. Kind of not far off. 100 million less than that is flood. Over 200 million. Snow is less than 150 million. Then it kind of reduces adhesion, subsidence, heat. And it's worth noting these are the Schedule 8 costs, but they don't necessarily relate to the severity risk, because you'd say that subsidence risks can be quite severe if those are not picked up, and they call, we've seen that landslides present a major risk to the safety of the railway. So these are about the things that you have. Lots of small wind events can have quite a big impact. OLE on the East Coast Main Line being a key one, but actually, subsidence and flood can have much more serious safety impacts. So it's worth kind of bearing that in mind. Fog is clearly a very minor issue, which is kind of worth paying attention to. But cold, heat, track buckles don't represent much of an issue. Possibly now because we're getting on top of managing that risk quite well. Anyway, so you can look here at the performance. So extremes, we got we were all right with it, and it's elevated a lot in the last couple of years that we've had a lot major service performance impacts Let's see, service performance under. Oh, actually, no. It's saying that we've got better in recent years. It's saying so this is PPM, the public performance measure, which is Network Rail's measure of how well services run. And actually, it's saying that we've got a bit better at it. So we were pretty bad in 2017 and 18, and we've got kind of better at it more recently. Okay, that's interesting. So there's loads of good stats here, and you can see the Schedule 8 costs split again over those. This is just the same data from earlier, but sort of split, showing what the impact is over time. Actually, 2013-14 we had a lot of wind impacts. And a lot of flood impacts, and you can see again that those subsidence impacts have increased. Actually, those subsidence impacts seem to be there's a trend of that trend is generally increasing. So that's an interesting one to pick up in that data as well. So yeah, there's just different ways of shaping the data. So here's the IPCC. There we are. This is actually looking at what's this number 4? They're looking at that is referencing the 6th assessment report. So the kind of the provisional version of the report from last year, but actually the latest version obviously was released last week. The IPCC have identified in their latest climate science synthesis report that it's certain that global temperatures will continue to increase until at least 2050. Therefore, the risks to our network from a changing climate over the coming decades will remain. There's no way of avoiding it. We've screwed that one up. The issues are going to be seriously problematic. Someone else has pointed out that the reason for this spike in performance is because of how many fewer trains we're running. Yeah, very, very good point. Marley C. Shout out to Marley C. Very good point. That's why that's got better. So it should be interesting to see whether that was a continuing downwards trend or what that would have done had it not been for COVID. So that's why everything's anomalously sort of shot upwards again. Let's see how it goes after that. So anyway, this is talking about the general trends in the impacts. And we've talked about this before in episodes, so we won't dwell on this. How are we responding to our changing climate? Well, this is talking about the fact they've got what they call in the seasonal weather management strategy. There's strategies that Network Rail have. I'm sure people could talk at length about which ones they think are rational and sensible and viable, and which ones are impactful, and which ones are a bit of a talking shop. But there are lots of different impacts, and you can see this is just lots of fairly dry text explaining some of these strategies and how these different strategies interact with each other. 1.4, resilience and adaptation of post-COVID worlds. This is talking about this. Throughout its history, the railway has played a vital role in supporting and enabling the growth of the UK's economy by providing mass transport services for freight and passengers. Over this time, it has seen and adapted to many changes in the structure of the industry and the needs of its customers and other stakeholders. So it's like, COVID-19, Williams Shapps Revival Club, all these changes, strong environmental credentials. However, continued reduction in passenger revenues has placed a great strain on public purse. This is where I'm like alarm bells ringing, because but it doesn't mean that there needs to be less funding. But anyway, by improving resilience and being adaptable to change, we'll continue to improve our efficiency, safety, and operational performance. This will increase our ability to deliver positive outcomes for customers, the communities in which we work, and the environment. That's fine. Before that, though, the paragraph before that, meeting the challenge of climate change is likely to require a combination of increased investment in resilience action and changes in operating practices. Okay. The uncertainties posed by the funding challenge and Williams Shapps plan mean that committing to investment levels beyond those already agreed and/or specifying process or structural changes too far into the future is not possible. That's a problem. In this report, we have therefore included currently funded and planned actions up to 2024 and sought to set our adaptation aims and pathway for future years in line with the climate change adaptation roadmap in our environmental sustainability strategy. That's some weasel words to say you're not giving us enough cash to really predict very far into the future. 2024 is 2 years away. Not useful. Graham Harth is pointing out that electrification is not just about electrification. I'm sure there's some chat going on about that here. An electrified railway is a much more resilient railway for all sorts of reasons. Huge amounts of stuff. All the other stuff that's built into that. Yeah, agreed. Absolutely, Graham. Fully agree. People say, but electrification is prone to wind. No, not when you build new OLE. It's just it's the bloody West Coast and East Coast main lines that fall over when the OLE gets blown around. It's not. You'll find the GWEP is not suffering from that. And so long as people pin down their bloody trampolines, then we shouldn't have issues. Structure this report. So fine, whatever. Right, section 2, adaptation reporting power. So this is good grief. This is going to be the thing describing what ARP is. This is going to be really dry. We might whiz through this at high speed because it's going to be really, really dry. So this is just... DEFRA has requested that Network Rail produce this report under the ARP requirements in the Climate Change Act 2008. Fine. The purpose of ARP is for key organisations in different market sectors to report on the steps they're taking to identify and adapt to climate risks. We're included as a vital part of the transport industry. So yeah, so that's basically via DEFRA and the ORR, who's obviously the regulator of transport, well, road and rail. The ARP thing is part of the Climate Change Act, so it's kind of a fundamental part of that legal requirement, and DEFRA have made that claim. So fine. So the first one was 2011, and the second one was in 2016, which I think the 2015 report was in relation to. So it was number 2 one. Anyway, so they're the 2 reports. Fine. What can you expect from the report? It provides an update, comprehensively sets out governance structure. So it's kind of dry. This is quite dry stuff, everyone. We're not going to worry too much. What's not included? Financial stuff, carbon and transition risks. It focuses on physical rather than transition risks. Transition risks consider the way in which changes in legislation, markets, and technologies could impact the organisation. Yeah, they're not bothering with that, and kind of rightly so. This is talking about resilience, physical resilience, the way that infrastructure is going to survive. Someone knocked out the line to Southampton and beyond by chucking an e-scooter onto the third rail. Weird, strange. Anyway, right. Oh, well, that was short. It's done. We've finished chapter 2, adaptation reporting power. It's done. We're now going to talk about governance at Network Rail, climate governance, chapter 3. It's 1946, folks. I don't want this to be a long one. Hopefully, we'll wrap up fairly short. Also, I need to take a drink. So, laying strong foundations. Right. Okay. Fine. Lots of headline stuff. There's nothing really new to say there. Our business structure. Okay, right. This is maybe useful because it's kind of a bit of a guide to Network Rail. My voice breaking there. Network Rail and explaining how it works. So, Network Rail is a devolved organisation with 5 regions supported by 14 routes. Yeah, we've done that already. The managing director of each region is responsible for long-term planning and asset management plans and overseeing route directors who are responsible for delivery of operations, maintenance and renewals. Well, that kind of makes sense. The routes are responsible for day-to-day delivery of train performance and work closely with their local train operating partners. Fine. Then you have national functions. So you've got the technical authority, which basically does like the standards and kind of makes sure that everything's done consistently and best practices shared. The system operator, who do all the network is unavoidably a network, a single network. So there's only so much devolution that you can do. You have to have a strong system operator, which is why it's bonkers that people are being sacked from it as we speak. Hundreds of them. Crazy stuff. Stop doing that, please. Anyway, right, enough of that. We have the route services, which kind of does stuff. I think gauging fits. Just gauging fit within route services. And IT is in there. Will, shout out to Will, who's in the chat. Hello. And then the central functions, which do other stuff like finance and HR and comms. Yeah, it's fine. Hello to the comms team. Lovely. Hello. So that's fine. But so some stuff about corporate governance. Well, dry. Does this? Is this relevant? Board of Directors reports to Secretary of State for Transport. Okay, fine. Strategy, governance, risk, blah 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 blah. Okay, fine. Oh, weather resilience and climate change adaptation governance. So the governance. So that there's all the strategic stuff happens. The delivery of our goal of a reliable railway service that is resilient to climate change is the responsibility of multiple teams and business units across NR and the wider rail industry. Okay. This all looks a bit fluffy. So it's describing sort of strategy and planning that happens at kind of network level, so top level. Asset management, which is generally happening at route level, but also is led by the technical authority chief engineer. Okay. Operational weather management, so that's led by the system operator. Okay, fine. The weather risk task force. Okay, so that's fine. Yeah, that's the mayor report looking at earthworks, which I've referenced in my about to come out in rail. Actually, I've done a piece on trees and earthworks, which hopefully will be an interesting read for everyone. That seems to be spread across various regional teams. And then the research, of course, is just everyone gets involved in the research analysis of technology and tools. Lovely. So there's a lot. It's just showing that it's quite complicated. And kind of rightly so. You can't... There are different people at different levels that are going to be getting involved in this stuff. So this is where it is useful to have this sort of document to allow the strategy to be kind of directed. What's Michael C? What are you sending to people? Some videos, Southampton Sky Legislature explosion of the e-scooter. Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, this is dry, isn't it? The chief engineers. Okay, so this is just talking about engagement and collaboration, and it's not okay. Fine. That's the governance. This is just complicated. It's just saying Network Rail is really complicated, and unavoidably so because it's a railway, and you'd expect it to be complicated. And we try, and here is how we try to make the right people talk to the right other people. Chapter 4, strategies and plans. This is okay. Let's see. So Our vision is for a railway that's safe and more resilient to the effects of weather and climate change now and in the future. The desired outcome for our journey to resilience is presented in figure 4.1. So the plan is always to have infrastructure that's able to withstand the impact of future weather conditions, an ability to rapidly recover from the impacts of adverse and extreme events, fine. The strategic outcomes of that, therefore, are that you have improved performance and safety during adverse and extreme weather conditions, financial savings through reduced compensation payments and repair costs. Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense. It's a good proxy, whether or not you care particularly about the money. It's a good proxy for just having efficiency. We have a limited supply of people to look after the railway. Ideally, you don't want them all to be running around like headless chickens, fixing bits that have fallen off. Ideally, you'd have them all just concentrating on the day-to-day of getting on top of maintaining it, the general maintenance of an aging asset, rather than having to worry about fixing all the landslips and clogged up drainage and so on. And then ultimately that results in an enhanced reputation and trust in the railway's ability to manage weather events. Ideally, we want, the ultimate aim is we want a railway that actually is the go-to way to travel around in extreme weather events, rather than where we've seen recently where it's falling down all too often. I would like a situation where in extreme weather events, people are encouraged not to drive, but to rely on public transport as the safe way to get around. That'd be great if we could do that. We can only do that if we're robust, resilient, and provide. In terms of how staffing is always a challenge on that front, because expecting staff to drive however they generally get to it, but bus or drive to the station or to the depot or to wherever it is to their place of maintenance, might that's where the risk is often in why the railway ends up shutting down. But I think we should have strategies to overcome that, because ultimately I'd like it to be in 10, 15 years time where we are dealing with, this is just the warm-up. The extreme weather events, the two storms we've just had, that's just table stakes at this point. We're looking at that's just going to be the norm. We're going to see storms like that increasing, and those are going to be the normal storms you expect a couple of times a month, with much worse things happening. That's what the IPCC reports are showing. So we need to not be shutting down the railway 2 or 3 times a month. We need to be running the railway as normal with a full timetable during those sorts of storm events. Scary though that may sound. So that requires planning. And so yes, you've got all these sort of the kind of the short, medium term operational and seasonal resilience. So yep, fine. Minimizing the seasonality bump, excellently implementing key route strategies. That's just garbled nonsense. I don't know what that means. Avoiding or excellently managing major incidents. This excellently managing, excellently implementing, it's a bit jargony, isn't it? I'm sure there's some meaning of that, but I don't like it. I don't like jargony phrases like that. The word excellent has a meaning. You don't need to turn it into a scientific word. Oh, yes. Replace like for better rather than like for like. Well, I've always pointed that out, but Network Rail's never funded to do that. Adapt at construction and at asset renewal, yep, for sure. But we get, again, the trouble is we do this as engineers, we try and do this, and then we always get pulled back from the brink. Drainage is an example. It's like, you said you're going to want to renew the drainage, but can we just not do that? No, let's just not do that. Don't renew the drainage because you were trying to do this to a shoestring budget. Like, okay, well, here's your plan. So the good thing is this. So the designers out there, Lewis, if you're watching or listening, this document is what you can refer to if someone tells you off for ensuring that you're capturing, if you're doing a decent design to minimise the, to provide a good long-term asset. This report is probably a good one to cite. Climate change considerations are embedded in business as usual through updated policy standards and procedures. It'd be nice if we had an accessibility one like this, because then I could talk about level boarding being part of it. It's something which we'll note about that later on, by the way. Interdependencies are understood and managed in collaboration with the rail industry, infrastructure operators, government, and other stakeholders. So there's all some good stuff. But again, unavoidably comes down to funding, doesn't it? It really does. Constantly saying excellent makes it sound like a secondary school, an academy, in fact, says Richard Smith. Yeah. Ofsted, well, quite. Anyway, right, so strategy stuff. There's some stuff about the sustainability strategy core priorities. Low emission railway, reliable railway, service resilient to climate change, fine. That's 1 and 2. 3, improve biodiversity of plants and wildlife, fine. 4, minimal waste and use and the use of materials, fine. And 5, social value framework. Yeah, lovely, fine, good. That's all good stuff. Climate change adaptation. Here we go. Graphics. That's what we want for a podcast with slides. 2020, fine. There's some stuff. There's the strategic assessments. Into control period 6, which is now. So we're now at the point where the 2024 outcome is that we should have tools, frameworks, standards, and information in place for strategic business planning. Okay. So understand it. So before that point, we should have a systems should be able to understand the cost of climate change adaptation and embed it in whole life costing. Okay, fair enough. I'm not seeing that happening. Work in partnership with neighbours and external stakeholders to identify opportunities for pilot projects. Not really seen that, but we might see some of that later in the report. Okay, fine. Regions undertake climate risk assessments for assets and priority locations to feed into next control period. Okay, I presume that work is ongoing. And before 2024, we also need to conduct criticality and vulnerability mapping of all assets across the network. Again, that's sensible. It's like basically a heat map of like, this is a really problem area, we need to focus resources on here. That sounds sensible. And then you can see, so Will, take note, here's where it would be very useful to have the centerline model running, because there's another use case, is that you can put a heat map on top of the centerline track model to actually enable a quick way to see that, to visualize that. It helps for planners to be able to visualize where problems are. And then by the end of control period 7, we've got things like metrics that track resilience benefits of our investment. Okay, it feels like that should be a thing we can already do. Agreed levels of service in extreme weather conditions with government and regulators. That feeds back into a bit what I was saying earlier. Change of regulatory funding. I don't know what that is that requires approval, but that's clearly a wannabe thing there. Interesting. Government make money available to implement regional pathways. There's another star. That's requires Treasury approval. All the things with stars in it are like the because Treasury are going to get involved and obviously say no. And then what other stuff we've got? Adaptation and resilience is a driver for investment. Absolutely, you'd hope that's happening. It should be already, for goodness sake. Regions develop long-term adaptation pathways. Fine. So then CP8, which is up to 2034, which is like very much we should be halfway through electrifying everything point of time. It's just a review and update policy situation, and implement regional adaptation pathway strategies thing. And then beyond 2034, so beyond control period 8, is sort of saying that, it's another review. Beyond that point, it's saying passengers and freight can get to their destination during poor weather. So the point of it is saying that beyond 2034, the hope is that with these strategies, this framework of strategies, Network Rail will be able to do the thing I said earlier, which is be relied upon to get people and things around in extreme weather events. Because let's face it, regular weather, the 2 storms we've had are going to be the norm. So we need to be able to survive that. We can't shut the railway down 2 to 3 times a month. Okay, that was a good little slide. Good stuff. Here are the the 5 pillars of key work streams for resilience. So strategy and planning, fine. Yeah, you have to kind of plan. Operational weather management, yep, that's key. We saw, that was one of the key mistakes that resulted in the Carment derailment, was actually the weather management, the dealing with multiple incidents at once. So that is really key. Asset management engineering, that's kind of the bit that I'm involved in my day job and as designers, and then all the people in asset management. That's the stuff we have to do in making sure the physical stuff does what it's supposed to be doing. The task force, so that's looking at the kind of generally looking at risks. So you've got implementation of the recommendations from the Mayor report and the Slingo report, Dame Julia Slingo's report as well. Those two, and the Earthworks sprint. I don't know what the Earthworks sprint is. I presume it's something else that's going on in the background that I've not really heard about. HMT happening, mostly not. Yes, quite. Matt Reed, this is just a thought. NR have a lot of vans. Is there anything in here about having cut their company emissions? Yeah, they are switching to EVs, but frankly, it's a pretty trivial amount of emissions to worry about, really. Research and analysis. So yeah, there's the research stream. So strategy and planning, 1, operational weather management, 2, 3, asset management and engineering, and 4, weather risk task force, fine. And then number 5 is research and analysis. To then feedback, that has to obviously then feed back into the others. So that's kind of fair enough. Okay, fine. Oh, lots of words. Looking to the future, there's just words. It's about the WISP. The WISP I'm already very unhappy about, because it looks like the WISP is going to end up just being like a bigger version of Williams Schatz without any kind of hard, this is what the railway will look like stuff. So I have to say, my hope in the WISP being the thing that I keep asking for, of a plan, a long-term plan. It doesn't look like it's going to be that, which is frustrating. But anyway. So here we are. So looking at these. So what is this? So action plans. So the CP5 route plans, CP6 route plans. So these are looking at like emissions scenarios, projection time periods, baseline data. 61 to 90. Oh yeah, crikey, of course it would be. So yeah, this is just talking about the baseline data that's being used and the way that so they're just describing the way that they've been building up these weather resilience and climate change adaptation plans on a route-wide basis, which is interesting. So fine, lots of text. Okay, fine. Key actions to manage risks. So yeah, okay. So here's some examples of examples of activities that we're talking about that physically happen that manage risks. So programs of drainage renewal and refurbishment to reduce the risk of flooding, slope stabilization, renewal of earthworks to reduce the risk of landslips, investment to reduce the risk of bridge scour, so from higher water waterway flow rates can result in bridge scour, which is obviously critical. Coastal, estuarine and river defense improvements, so where you got water washing at the railway, whether it's at the coast or next to a river. Enhanced maintenance of vulnerable track locations and OLE systems to combat high temperature impacts. So remodeling station throats that have knackered rubbish track that's not stressable, getting rid of all unstressed track areas where possible. Jointed track is useless in hot weather. And then likewise with OLE, making sure that OLE is tensioned, is auto-tensioned or whatever to make sure that it's sufficiently resilient. Veg management plans to mitigate wind impacts. So that's explicitly stating getting rid of trees that could fall onto the railway. Good. I'm glad they're explicitly stating that. Well, okay, implicitly stating that. They're not explicitly stating it, but they're as explicitly stating it as any Network Rail document will, given how sensitive a subject it is. Funding of research to better understand the weather impact risks and prevention, yet fine. And then installation of remote condition monitoring to improve proactive asset management and operational responses. So there's a good list of things. That's a decent list of kind of examples of things that Network Rail can be doing. So that's kind of useful to pick that out. I know that it's 2 minutes past 8. Here's some graphics that are very small. Can we zoom in on this without me screwing everything up? Let's go in here. Let's see. So we've got... looking at the different design disciplines-ish. So MEP, looking at some of the kind of the functions, buildings and civils. That's the kind of that structure's drainage. It's interesting drainage is there rather than down here. Yeah, they took drainage out and made it a buildings and civils thing recently, but civils don't have a clue how to do drainage, so bit of a weird one. Geotechnics is there as well. That often used to sit with us. So they've taken it all away, so we're just stuck with our track and S&C, which is fine, because, it's good. Fine. There's enough for us to keep busy with. There we are. Tracking S&C. Fine. Control, command, signaling. So that's the 3 C's really. Control, command, and communications, and blah blah blah. So that's stuff there. Systems engineering. So traction, rolling stock, and plant stuff in there. Actually, it's funny. Yeah, ME, but not P. P is down here. So it's a bit of a strange way to split it out. But anyway, I think that is sort of how the new standard split is set up to sort of fit that way. I think those also map onto the TSIs. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but anyway. Yeah. So let's do that again. So fine. There's a load of things that's the way it's split, and there's some risk assessments saying what all these different things need to do, and that's kind of related to what we were talking about a minute ago. So yeah, fine. So this is the 4.4 actions speak louder than words. In setting our vision, strategies, priorities, and ambitions, we understand that actions speak louder than words. Over time, delivering meaningful action will help us continue to demonstrate that our strategy and governance on climate resilience and adaptation is being implemented effectively. Okay, fine. Whoa there. Well, here is a thing. Here's a sort of Gantt chart situation going on with there's the 2016, 2021, 2026, 2031. So these are the measurement points of saying, right, this is where these things need to be getting delivered. And it's saying all the different things that are supposed to be getting delivered when. Again, the point of this is to allow Network Rail to be held accountable for the process by DEFRA, in fact, not by DFT, but by DEFRA, to make sure they're doing all the things they need to do. And you can see lots of stuff here. I'm going to put it on screen so you can all see it. But obviously, I'm not going to read through it because it's 4 minutes past 8, and also because there's lots of detail there. But the point of this, I'm not reading through the thing that I'm not reading through this in detail, although obviously there's the audio-only people, high audio-only people. But the point is, it's a bit of allow you to go in and pick out the detail yourselves on the PDF. You can go and download the PDF yourselves. You just have to search for third Climate Adaptation Report. Actually, search Network Rail Climate Adaptation Report and you'll get it. And a bit of an assessment of how you... so there's an ISO standard that actually allows Network Rail to measure how successfully they're doing this stuff, to measure how robust their approach is. The Climate Change Committee, the IPCC, has recognised the adaptation planning as being decently advanced, which is good. So that does reflect well on Network Rail. The ORR commissioned an independent review, which said that there are many strengths to the current weather resilience climate change adaptation plans. Good, that's good stuff. So that is good. Gives confidence that Network Rail are doing the right thing, and I think they are. They're not funded well enough to do it, but I think generally Network Rail are doing all right on this stuff. So so here we are, and here's how they then monitor impact by all these different things. So obviously there's the obvious one. They use public performance measure, the standard sort of measure of how much trains are running around as they're supposed to, is the kind of the standard overall measure of performance. Fine. Things like delay minutes is another way. Then assessing against the strategies, and then metrics about performance. So things like actually, I've been quoting bits of it. I need to quote more bits of it. The annual returns, Network Rail annual returns, is a spreadsheet that you can download every year, and it has a load of stuff of how much they're updating. The condition of it gives measures of condition of earthworks across routes and then across the network as well. So there are things that you can the metrics there. That's now. Let's have a look at chapter 5, and we're going to hammer through this because it's getting late. Risk assessment process, so it's talking about, fine, good grief. There's some stuff. It's a very large, they're calling it our CRAM. CRAM stands for Corporate Risk Assessment Matrix, and good grief, it is crammed. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's there. So just, there we go, fine. And there's loads of stuff about enterprise risk records. I don't know what that is. Fine. Climate risk assessment process. There's lots of stuff looking at causes and consequences. Fine, okay, we're going to whiz through this. So this is kind of looking at the disruption, looking at causes, looking at consequences, and understanding controls. They're calling it this a bow tie assessment. That's quite neat, but fine. The National Climate Change Risk Assessment Influence on our ARP. So that's to do with the CCC and the advice it's been publishing to government. So this is the stuff. This is the infrastructure sector risks, and then how they're relevant to the Network Rail strategy, or the Network Rail ARP. That I keep saying ARP. This is kind of what this is really. This report is kind of describing the ARP. So there we are. Fine, lovely. Oh, David Shepherd, can you post a link to the report in the description? Yes, I can do. Matt Reed is saying, will all the targets be allowed to be changed when the name company is changed? Presumably, yeah. How have we assessed climate risk for ARP3? So there's just describing how okay, fine. Defining assets within the risk assessment. Okay, this is all looking at different sort of managed kind of risk scoring matrix, so looking at different numbers here and how you score these things. This is just describing the process, how they go against each the CRAM, that thing earlier, modified CRAM used in the chief engineer's risk assessment. They are, so that's fine. Then it's worth looking through these to sort of see how they're assessed, but it's not worth dwelling on them because it's all quite finicky. So that's the approach to assessing the climate change risk. Interdependency. So this is how all the different things relate to each other. We cannot create a resilient railway in isolation from the wider world. Managing our risks and opportunities will need the engagement of, support from, and collaboration with a considerable range of organisations that operate in and influence numerous UK sectors. Without this, we will not be able to implement many aspects of our climate strategies and adaptation actions in the most efficient, appropriate, or effective way. Fair enough. So they've got some case studies in here which are interesting. And this is an example of where they're having to interact with what was British Waterways, and I now think is Scottish Waterways or Waterways Scotland. Whatever the Scottish version of it is, it's not been divested in the way that the British Canal Trust, or whatever it is now called, what was British Waterways and should still be British Waterways, is. Anyway, so let's talk about an interdependency. Fine. Case study 3, power dependency. Yep, obviously. So lightning-induced power cut, which happened in August 19, caused issues. Case study 3 is interdependent systems, specifically looking at the River Loon, record flow. OLE draws power from sources outside the flooding, so we could still run trains, but the station was closed. Okay. So the station was closed because of a lack of lighting, because they were relying on local power, but the OLE was still able to run. So that's talking about the interdependence of different power systems. So and loss of power to the Vodafone centre, which provides emergency mobile signal coverage. So there's some challenges there in December 2015. So you can see the interdependency. So that's some interesting case studies there. And again, they're talking about how they kind of categorize these risks. Oh, there's another very crazy graphic. These are some seriously interesting and crazy graphics, but this is just showing countless different sectors and how they all interact with each other. So, like, what is this? Road transport, ports, local authorities, business, you name it. It's within this, and there's a bit of a description of what the interdependencies are, and the colours here. So the blue refers to people who depend on Network Rail. The green is people who Network Rail depend on, and then the yellow is that there's a codependency. So there's an interaction there, a back and forth interaction. That's kind of not a bad way to visualize what's quite a complicated series of ideas. So again, get that page up and you can kind of look at it in detail. But that's quite interesting. All right, and then looking at climate change risks. So this is where they look at the kind of the key risks, which is interesting. So things like precipitation, sea level rise, coastal erosion, flooding, temperature, storm and wind events. These are kind of the key climate. There's basically just 4 of them there. The key climate variable groups, as they say. So, sorry, I just needed to drink. I'm talking a lot. It's a solo episode and it's a report page turn, so I always lose my voice. So Gareth Williams is asking what happens in the case of OLE failing at night. There are different things happen. Some newer units generally have an onboard power battery to keep things going, but sometimes the train just goes. Older units that are not even that old, just like previous generation units, often it's just game over, lights off if they lose power. So are underground metro services less prone to weather problems? Not necessarily. No, not particularly. What else? So we've got. So this is then breaking down each of those. So these are the 4 headline variable groups they're talking, and then each of these then has a kind of a breakdown of the different pressures. So precipitation, you've got long wet days and seasons and the impacts of that. Fluvial river and pluvial flooding. So that's like river and surface water flooding. High and low soil moisture. So that's very important. Intense and heavy rainfall, so that kind of the impact. So the differences between long wet days and seasons and intense and heavy rainfall, they have slightly different impacts, longer term impacts. So the longer term stuff can have longer term impacts on earthworks. The short term stuff can have impact on drainage and things like that. And then snow and ice, of course, as an impact with precipitation. So that's the precipitation one. And then they've gone down and broken each of these into scores of the risk. And you can see there's some severe risks associated. So that's a balance, as with any risk assessment, it's a balance of probability and severity, and that gives you your the risk. And so you see some of the severe risks here. So things like the fact that and this is also in relation to the time frame as well. So the current 2050s and 2080s. So again, and this happens, and then you've got an example. Case study 4 is their Watford collision, which I wrote about before, which I'd written about before Carmen happened, and then obviously Carmen happened. It's an example of a severe issue, a severe impact, a potential train head-on collision as a result of a precipitation failure. And then some more London flash flooding at London Euston, and so and then Carmen actually is a case study here, so they've actually looked at it as a case study. So it's well worth having a look at. And the Harrington sinkhole, the sinkhole that opened up in 2018 at Harrington. So it's just some very strange behaviours. Other kind of impacts. So that's a really good. There's some really good detail here. If you want to understand how the railway is impacted, a bit like we did for the RailNet, this would have been a good reference for it actually. This really breaks down with some key kind of case studies of what those impacts can be. So again, if you're working on the railway, this is a good reference document. So this is then looking at sea level rise and coastal erosion and flooding. And again, it's the same thing. Sea level rise, coastal erosion, coastal flooding, storm surges. And then again, it's a matrix of the risks going forward. And you see the risk is actually lower than for the precipitation-related things. But again, looking at seawalls, so the Parton seawall here on the Cumbrian coast, the Dover to Folkestone failure that happened, and the impacts there. Yes, looking at the weird state of the railway there. Anyway, it's very strange. And then the next one is temperature and the impacts of temperature. So then that's heat waves, extreme heat, extreme colds, higher general average temperatures, and sun glare actually, which is an issue. More sun glare, more signal sighting issues. And again, looking at the severity of these things, and actually the severe impacts are things like deterioration of tunnel material. By 2080, that's going to be a severe risk, but not quite as severe as the repeated periods of of shrinkage, of the cycles of shrinkage you get from soils, resulting in deterioration, track, and performance impact. So there's some serious issues there. You've got some issues from track buckles as an example of some that's an obvious impact, and some general heat waves case study talking about the impacts, and there's things of passenger and staff welfare, pressure of that, and so that's something else that has to be thought about as well. Without power, air conditioning failed, making it hard to control temperature. Yeah, so this is talking about the damage to OLE was caused a passenger caused, there's a typo there, never mind, a passenger service to become stranded near Peterborough. So it's talking about the issues there. Temperature impacts on electrification assets, on vegetation. It's a very good detailed document here with lots of references here. Then storm and wind events, some of the obvious things. Overtopping of coastal sea defences, lightning, these sorts of events, and then again a risk assessment. And again, the worst here is looking at erosion, scour, loss of stability of sea defences from high winds and storms. So again, we're going through all these storm impacts. There's a shed on the railway, standard. The York lightning strike is actually here. I remember that. Went pop, made the rock go pop. The rock went pop. Wasn't very good. It was, in fact, a disaster. 19,000 delay minutes, causing serious inconvenience to thousands of passengers, costing over 3.2 million in delay compensation payments. Yeah, I remember that happened. So that's a really good section, actually. I know I've whizzed through it, but there's loads of good detail in there for you to explore. Yes. So now this is where we look at progress on those actions from the previous reports. This is ARP3. The previous report was ARP2. And we can look at the measured, the kind of what has been, when things were supposed to be done and whether they've been achieved. Develop and publish long-term route studies. Not achieved. Work is ongoing. Never mind. Develop CP6 asset policies. Complete-ish. This one. Publish CP6 strategic business plans. That has been completed. Good. Fine. So that's good. Those are the key kind of planned actions, and they kind of so mixed bag there. It looks like 50-50 in terms of what has not been done. So the progress, and then again we've got another big graphic here showing progress of things that kind of on the actions. So this is kind of talking. Well, they've just kind of put it there. I don't know whether how they're measuring the progress. There's just a lot of stuff there, but anyway, they're just listing stuff. It's too late for us to go into the great details of that, but given that how much things like the WISP have been delayed, Network Rail and all the changes, the industry changes, just are a massive hampering problem for achieving some of this stuff. Because with all the changes, all the staff, literally staff being sacked who will have been working on this because of government's stupidity and short-termism. Some stuff about standards guides, fine. Collaboration engagement, blah blah blah. Research analysis, just a general overview of what has and has not been achieved. Fine. And this is going down into kind of region and route actions and what has been managed. And this is going into some selected examples of successes, actually. So I'm not going to read any of them out because otherwise I want to read all of them out. But you can see this is so 8.2.7 in the report. In fact, sorry, just generally 8.2 and beyond goes into the details. So page 95 onwards, you're looking at details for each of the different things, some case studies of changes that have been made, some good examples here of things of money being spent and changes being made to deal with resilience of the different kind of key headline issues that we looked at before. Those four headlines of precipitation, sea level rise, coastal erosion, coastal flooding, temperature, and storm and wind events, and kind of looking at those actions on a kind of a route by route basis. So there's some good examples there, and then looking at planned actions for what's going on ahead. Yeah, another one of these sort of things describing what the planned actions are for the next 5 years. So things that need to be happening sort of imminently. Interesting. Yeah, fine. Strategies. Okay, lots of stuff about what's happening, last minute action plans, the case study. So this is talking about route plans and how the route plans influence. So this is a case study of looking at the interaction of the plan with the challenge. So this is saying, this is just, trying to... The point of this report is to make that point. I suppose it's partly a tool to go to Treasury and say, look, this is happening and you need to fund to solve these problems unless you want the railway to collapse. The trouble is the Treasury does want the railway to collapse, so possibly the industry is making a rod for its own back here. But anyway, so here's a summary. This is so 8.3.6 is useful because it gives you a proper a summary of actions and completion dates for us to be able to look at and hold Network Rail accountable. Then we get to the conclusion. So, okay, we're nearly on. It's nearly 2020 in time. So, fine. Right. So here's the kind of the key conclusions. They're saying that we have a good understanding of the risks our network will be vulnerable to from the changing climate. I think that's true. Network Rail do have a pretty good understanding of what the problems are now. They next say we have made good progress so far in relation to embedding climate risk into our organisation at a strategic and management level. So that kind of, okay, yes, there's an understanding of it, but I don't think there's enough of an understanding at the top level. Still, a lot of people looking too much at how do we spend less and not enough at looking at that as the target rather than how do we make the railway work better, and then the good stuff like efficiencies will just come as a happy side effect. I think that's, mixed bag on that. They also say, we have also implemented a range of adaptation measures across our routes at the most vulnerable areas to respond to previous climate events. Yep, fine. There are some case studies, not everywhere, but fine. But they also say we still have work to do to prepare the railway infrastructure to minimise the impacts of climate change by 2050. Well, that's a given, isn't it? So fine. That's a nice little summary of the conclusions there, and that's it. That's the report. We've just got some appendices there. There we are. Happy days. The end of the report. So. That was a report. I think that's hopefully a useful whiz through. I know we didn't go into lots and lots of detail in there, but it was supposed to just be a bit of a summary, a bit of a wayfinding exercise for people who maybe want to dive into the report in more detail. If I don't do so, please remind me to put a link in the description. But just Google Network Rail Climate Adaptation Report and you'll get this link. So it's not a hard thing to find. And let's get rid of my muggins because it's the end of the show. Thank you everyone for. Let me just do this and then switch my cursor off. There we go. Fine. Thanks everyone for listening. We're available on all good podcasting platforms. I generally keep on top of the update uploads. They sometimes they're maybe a few days late. They're never on time, specifically on time, because I have to wait for YouTube to finish processing, and then I have to download it from YouTube, because if I do it, well, for these obviously live ones, there's no other way. But even when I do pre-record ones, if I do it straight from the MP4. For whatever reason, it just doesn't process the anyway. So it's better for me to download it from YouTube. But YouTube is stupid and it limits bandwidth, so it only allows me to download it from YouTube very, very, very slowly. So so sometimes I'll do it 10, 15 minutes after. Sometimes I'll have to do it a couple of days after. Anyway, Patreon.com/GarethDennis to support me and make more of this happen. Thanks everyone. Oh, I haven't updated the list of people. I did it a couple of weeks ago. I think it's mostly up to date. Not that many changes. But shout out to all of you supporting. You're brilliant. All of you who support. Graham, I'm looking at you particularly. Railnatter returning champion. But everyone who supports on Patreon, every little bit is welcome. It's super cheap. It's not like expensive. You can do it for £1. You can do £1 a month, and you get some bonus things, and you get to chat exclusively to me, and it's much easier for the Patreon people to prod me about things. And generally you get a sway on future episodes, although it might not feel like it at the moment because it's been a bit of a chaotic start to the year, and I know we're short. There are lots of guests I need to find and source and get. VLR being a good example of one. Merch. There is a new mug going to be appearing very soon. The Abolish the Treasury mug is coming soon, folks. It's coming soon. John Stone of this parish has said, God damn it, I want it. So and others of you have been requesting. It's coming. And do make requests for any other sort of merch that you want, particularly if you're Patreon. You can I will have to pay attention to you for what other merch you might want. But funny things to put on mugs seem to be quite popular. So do suggest those. PayPal.me/GarethDennis. Every now and then people drop me a little penny or two on there. It's much appreciated. And GarethDennis.co.uk/Discord for the Discord server where all the chat that's been happening continues to happen. It's worth saying, if you are going to do a PayPal, don't do it to me at the moment. Don't donate food or stuff to Ukraine. There are a variety of good sources where you can go and find good places to donate cash if you wanted to Ukraine. If you want to make a difference, there are lots of funds on there that you can choose to support. But don't send stuff, because actually stuff isn't that useful and it ends up often rotting in a warehouse. Often in the UK, not in or wherever you happen to be, not in the place it's supposed to go. I'm seeing lots of efforts of communities to put shoeboxes together. I did so many shoebox things when I was a kid. In fact, the first time I was doing shoeboxes was to send stuff to Bosnia, and what a waste of time that was. It's just it makes us feel good, but it's not actually any use to the people. Sending a cuddly toy and a tin of baked beans is just not any use to anyone. So don't do that. Just donate cash. Anyway, so that's my request. On the theme of the climate emergency and decarbonisation, the way the railway's responding to it, tomorrow there is a PWI technical seminar. If you are in the Manchester area or fancy travelling over by train, okay, it's £150 for non-members to go and do it. But if you have those means, or ideally, if work will pay for it, if you work in the industry and work will pay for it, the Permanent Way Institution technical seminar is happening. It's a full day event at the Manchester Conference Centre. Go to that. And there should be some very interesting presentations there. And what we've just talked about should be absolutely relevant to that. So that should be interesting. Yes. Richard Am. Richard has done part of it is MSc. Part of their MSc work is to create this really nice inclusive design proposal document. It's very good. It's very good. In fact, let's just drag this over here. It's if we go in, yeah, lovely. It's just nice. It's got these I don't know what I'm revealing there actually. In fact, I should probably have checked what I'm revealing. Anyway, it's fine. None of you saw any of that. So anyway, it's fine. Three, so there, and fine. It's this, and it's a very nice document. It's good. It's talk about costs, and it's very nice. And I've helped him support it with some statistics and stuff. And it's very nice indeed. It's good stuff. Yes. So that's nice. Mend the Gap is very good. I like it. It is very nice. Dave Frankel has done moving on from that. Dave Frankel has done a video about basically his interview with me, including me and Alex Sobel, the Leeds MP, and we're talking about IRP versus particularly West Yorkshire. It's quite an interesting little interview. Thanks, David, for doing that one. It was quite a while ago, but he uploaded it on February 16th. Go in and have a look, have a watch. You can go into David's channel and you'll find it nice and easily. So, yeah, do that. And, talking of which, I can officially reveal I'm going to be in front of the Transport Select Committee next week. I'm going to be in an oral evidence session on the 9th of March on the morning. It's the 9 a.m. session. Actually, wait a minute. I can do that. 9 a.m. There we are. That's probably what I want to do, isn't it? Lovely. There we go. Marvellous. Yes, I am. It's me appearing in front of the Transport Select Committee. So it won't be on BBC Parliament, but it will be on parliament.tv. So you can search Parliament. You will be able to go onto the Parliament web, the parliament.tv website, which has all the different sessions. How feisty do I plan on being? I'm going to be very well behaved so that people listen to the words I'm saying. But if they try and pull on me what they did on Andy Burnham, fireworks. Anyway, let's see how that goes, shall we? I'm going to be up with a few other people, so I might not have much chance to say things. We'll see. I'll be there. I'll interject where I feel like it's necessary to do so. I'm nervous, but I'm excited. It's an opportunity for me to make a difference, I think. So that should be interesting. Can you imagine it? Just some old muggins like me in front of the Transport Select Committee in an oral evidence session. Let's see what happens. Talking of which, and relevant to next week's episode, I didn't actually plug this last week. Because I was on Trash Future. I was on It's the Free One. When was it? Last week? 2 weeks ago? Yeah, so go and listen to that. It was a fun episode. Dave's saying, hopefully, by appearing in front of the TSC won't harm my career. I don't think so. I care very deeply about the railway industry, and ultimately that's my aim. I will be moaning, no matter who's in charge, I will be moaning about their bad decisions. Just so happens to be that the government are the ones in charge, and they're Conservatives, and they're making very bad decisions. Treasury have always been the problem. So, yeah, we'll see. So, go listen to Trash Future, and it's all about TfL's funding being stripped back and relevant to the nonsense about driverless tubes, which is also tube trains, which is also relevant because next week we're going to be talking about why driverless tube trains will never work, why it's a stupid idea, why the numbers are all against it. Yes. So, that should be an interesting one. We'll talk about driverless tube trains. It'll be based on, I'll just be talking about my article that I wrote whenever it was last year, and I'll kind of pull in some of the statistics behind that and some of the data, and it'll be a bit of a Q&A session. So it won't be like a super detailed, many slides one. It'll be a bit of an open Q&A where we can talk about it. Should be interesting. Hopefully I'll be able to do that. It might turn into it might end up being a panicked pre-record if I end up being in London the whole time. My plan is to get back from the TSC to York by the end of the day, so I can deliver this one live. So that's the plan. We'll see. Anyway, let's go big face. So that was a rail natter. It was an hour and a half rail natter. Sorry, everyone, that went on a bit, but hopefully it was interesting. I know we spent a bit of time on the news. I will see you all. I'll see some of you in 5 minutes because we're about to have a meeting about some Network 2050 stuff. So hello everyone who's going to be in that. But after that, I will see some of you, all of you, hopefully a good chunk of you next week for another Rail Natter. In the meantime, don't do too much doom scrolling. I will, just take good care of yourselves, frankly, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio, lovelies. Cheerio.